Across many developing economies, and especially Africa tonight, millions of young people are discussing politics, arguing online, taking sides with parties, attacking opponents, debating powers. Meanwhile, roads are collapsing silently. Community weakens silently. Trust erodes gradually. And family suffers privately. And somewhere beneath all this political noise, society itself slowly forgets how to build. Perhaps this is one of the greatest hidden crises of our time. Because across many societies today, especially Africa, politics has become too important. Every frustration becomes political. Every disappointment becomes political. Every tribal tension becomes political. Every economic hardship becomes political. And even hope itself has become political. Who wins power? Who controls the government? Who gets access? Who captures the state? And perhaps this is a significant part of the problem we face, because history teaches something uncomfortable. No civilization was ever built by politics alone. Not Rome, not Britain, not America, not China, not the trading African society of the past. Strong civilizations were never sustained by government alone. They were sustained by communities and societies. So it was by productive community, by merchants, by farmers, by craftsmen, by universities, by civil culture, by trust structures, by cooperatives, by local enterprise, and I mean by ordinary people who saw themselves not as merely as spectators, but as participants in the process. And perhaps one of the least discussed crises facing the society today is not merely the crisis of government, but the abandonment of society. So over time, many citizens have subconsciously outsourced civilization upward. Shop, government; road, government; electricity, government; security, government; innovation, government; and on, government. And once an entire society begins surrendering responsibility upward, politics becomes overheated, overloaded, and dangerously central. And this is one of the most hidden consequences of post-colonial political culture across Africa. So the state has become psychologically larger than the society itself. Politics has become the highest pathway to wealth, the highest pathway to opportunities, the highest pathway to prestige, and the highest pathway to relevance. And gradually, society weakened, community weakened, independent institution weakened, productive cooperation weakened, and civil responsibility also weakened. Meanwhile, political competition intensified because the control of the state means the control of economic power. This is why elections have become existential. Too much hope has become concentrated around central power. In many places, the political class no longer just governs society. It has become society's ultimate aspiration unconsciously. A child grows up watching a professor struggling to survive. A brilliant entrepreneur spends more time navigating broken systems than creating value. And a graduate submits CV after CV while hearing, "Do you know somebody?" And in the same vein, a teacher faces generations of children only to retire to invisibility and poverty. Meanwhile, society watches the political class produce sudden wealth, influence, security, convoy, visibility, and worship. And so quietly, society absorbs the lesson through species. Because civilizations are shaped not through what they preach, but what they reward. Please reason with me. Perhaps this is the worst tragedy. Not merely that politicians became too powerful, but that society itself stopped believing in its own agencies. Unexpectedly, when politics become more profitable than productivity, societies begin abandoning the hard work of building. Innovation weakens, enterprise weakens, craft weakens, merit weakens, and initiative weakens as well. Do you blame young people? They stop dreaming about mastery. They start dreaming about access. As a culture slowly shifts from creation to connection, from contribution to proximity, from productivity to patronage. And eventually, even politics itself becomes dangerous because too much expectation is now placed on the state. Every election becomes emotionally explosive. and every transition becomes existential. Not because citizens are irrational, but because too much economic power has become trapped around political assets. Weak societies over-centralizes hope, but strong ones distribute capabilities. And this may be one of the most important lessons of development in the 21st century. Strong societies do not merely produce powerful government, they produce capable societies. Such societies that can organize and where enterprise can thrive without political permission. Where ingenuity is encouraged rather than controlled. Where productive participation is distributed widely enough, such that politics is no longer the sole gate to survival. Because the more productive a society becomes, the less dangerous politics becomes. Now, this does not mean government does not matter. It does. Politics matters. Leadership matters. Institutions also matters. A dysfunctional state can destroy enormous value. But politics alone cannot manufacture civilization. And perhaps this is where Africa must begin asking deeper questions. Not merely who should govern us, but how do we rebuild society itself? How do we rebuild trust? How do we rebuild productive participation? How do we rebuild local participation? How do we rebuild communities capable of solving problems together? Because perhaps one of Africa's biggest assets is not hidden beneath the soil, it's within the society itself, within its relationship, within its communal instinct, within its entrepreneurial energy. Its young population, its informal network, and untapped civil capability. For centuries, African societies survived not because government was really strong, but because communities knew how to carry one another. Village raised children collectively. Families contributed to weddings, to burial, to occasions, ceremonies. People still understood that survival itself requires cooperating. That social fabric, imperfect as it was, carries enormous civilization strength. But modern political culture has increasingly centralized both power and imagination. And perhaps that's why frustration now feels heavier. People are increasingly waiting for decent systems to solve problems that societies once actively participated in solving themselves. And maybe the future begins changing when citizens begin to see themselves as merely victims of broken systems and begin seeing themselves as co-builders of civilization. That shift matters enormously because abundance is rarely created by politics alone. It emerges when society itself becomes capable of organizing productively. When citizens cooperate, when societies and communities emerge together, when trust compounds, when institutions emerges beyond politics, when responsibilities becomes distributed, when people stop waiting endlessly to be rescued. If you're a Nigerian, if you're an African, please listen to me. Let's take the responsibility. Gather people in your community, gather teachers, entrepreneurs, professionals, artisans, policymakers, people in your community, and begin asking difficult but necessary questions. What futures do we want? What societies do we want our children to inherit? And what resources already exist among us? What talent remain unused? How can we turn trust into productivity? What local systems can we build? How do we turn shared burden into shared prosperity? And how do we turn relationships into economic cooperation? Because most of the transformative development in history did not begin in presidential villas. It started from towns, network of people, in cooperatives, in village square, or people who really care and want to change. These are not merely acts of survival. They are acts of civilization, because civilization does not collapse only when government fails. Sometimes civilization weakens because society quietly stops carrying its own weight. And no government, no matter how powerful, can permanently carry a society that has forgotten how to build. Africa's futures may not be decided merely in presidential palaces, but inside whether ordinary people still remember how to organize, build, trust, and act together. This is because the future of civilization has never really belonged to people with powerful government, but with people who still know how to build. Because abundance is not merely demanded, it is built. I'm Segun Oke. Thank you for thinking with me. If this conversation resonates with you, please do well to drop a comment. I'll read them. And do share widely. Subscribe to this channel, and I hope to see you in our next episode. Thank you.